Hello, my name is Jason Reichl, and you're listening to Risk Management Brick by Brick. I'm fascinated with people who are helping build and maintain the physical world around us. On each episode of this podcast, we'll dive in with a risk manager, speak to them about how technology plays a role in this process. Hey, David, thank you for joining me on Brick by Brick. I'm really excited to be speaking to you about Mylo and all of the interesting things you're doing. I'm really interested in insurance and ways of bringing service to the masses. And so I'm really excited to sit down and have a conversation with you. First of all, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Great. It's a Wednesday. Let's talk a little bit about your career and how you ended up as, the CEO of the company and sort of what the company's mission is and how you align to that through your career. I kind of like to paint the story about the most fascinating thing about insurance to me is that there's never a clear direct line. So I'm very interested in kind of going through that storyline.
Yeah, no, when I was 18 years old, I thought, man, I really want to be in insurance. Just kidding.
Right, me too.
Right? No, I literally got out of college, went to work for a mutual fund company, and started a retirement business that JP Morgan bought. At the end of that, I was in a position where I ran that business. We sold that business or combined that business with a couple others, and it became Empower Retirement. And that was sort of a freeing moment, right? So what do I want to do? They wanted me to do some stuff. I decided I want to do a lot of entrepreneurial work. Went to work for a company called SelectQuote for a little while, got to know a big insurance broker and through distribution, really trying to solve the same problem we're trying to solve, which I'll get to in a minute. And said to them one day, you guys are nuts. You've got distribution and money and you don't do this well. And they said, put a pitch together and put it in front of the board. And I walked out with a little bit of money and a mandate. And that was the beginning of Mylo. And the thesis was, and is, that ultimately technology allows us to provide a good, if not great, right, insurance transaction solution for the underserved market, which are higher premium or lower premium, higher volume clients that, like the big Locked-ins and Aons and others, can't afford to do. And everybody's got it, right? And so we believe that through integration, like the simple things, not asking the same things twice, understand what the carrier appetite is. And then the harder things, like understanding how to classify risk and what coverage somebody needs and how to get that potential client to the insurance company that is the best fit for them, which doesn't always mean the lowest price, right? We can do that at scale only by using technology, because otherwise you have to train too much information into one person's head for a $3,000 premium or $1,000 premium client. And we've learned a bunch, and it's been 11 years, and we're still learning and growing, and it's good to be here.
Let's start there at 11 years ago. So now with AI and all these things, which we'll get into, and where the state of the business is now, and the state of that hypothesis as you guys try to solve this problem, what was the reaction to that 11 years ago in the insurance industry when you wanted to solve this problem?
Sure.
Versus maybe how are the conversations now around this problem that you're seeing?
Yeah, sort of all over the board. So, obviously the big broker gave me a bunch of money to start the business, so the reaction wasn't terrible there. Because of their relationship, one of the big insurance companies sent a bunch of people out and said, oh, we'll never do that. Won't say who that is, but that insurance company's probably invested more in small business and recommendation engines and AI and machine learning than anybody else to date since then.
Yeah.
Right. And then COVID happened in the middle. So it was like going upstream. And then COVID happened and people figured out, even if I don't, I don't think bind online, everybody says it, but it's not really here. Certainly not for any complexity. Right. Yes. And if you're a phone insurance or your travel insurance, your pet insurance, it's something you put into like a box, right? That's pretty easy. But once you get into real insurance, right, it gets harder, even for the simple real insurance. And I don't think people are there. And we know, because we've done this. We've actually put stuff online, and somebody will go through and they'll put their information. We'll give them something. And when we have a bind button, sometimes like they'll hover over it and they'll call us. right?
Yes.
Because everybody's scared. I'm going to make the wrong decision. Am I paying too much? When something happens, right? Is it excluded on page 97, point two of the document that they send? Because nobody reads that. And so, it's an evolution, right? And so I think when we started, there was more resistance, but it's sort of come a long way. And whether you call it an algorithm or AI or machine learning or, or generative AI or, all of that, it's getting smarter. But I think right now, and you said this in our conversation, right? It is like, it's like surfing a wave. You got to be on the wave to catch the break. And I think that's what we're doing. And carriers and capabilities and recommendations and, whether it's a true recommendation or an algorithm that's learning and getting smarter, or you're delivering that on the screen, on somebody's phone, when we're talking to somebody, right? All of those things can be enhanced, and it allows more consistent, better recommendations to happen for the market that we're trying to serve, which is this underserved, high volume, low premium market, on a consistent basis. Like we want the people that are buying this, or the small business owners that are buying this, to get the best recommendation that they possibly can in the smallest amount of time. And frankly, that's what they want too. I mean, nobody, starts a bakery because they want to buy insurance, right? They have to have insurance because the thing that they're investing their time, effort, and life in needs to, not ruin their life if something bad happens. And that's what we try to do.
It makes sense, the models we have, but it's always sort of been fascinating that the higher you go up with your insurance premiums, the more likelihood a business has a person or a fleet of people who understand insurance talking to someone else who really understands insurance. Yet there is this bottom part of the market where the person knows nothing about this, are probably as risky as some of these big organizations who are making, multiple choices to defer their risk in multiple ways. And, the small business, their only mitigation is through insurance.
That's
really.
exactly
That's
right.
their
And
only
they don't
solution.
know, and they don't have any idea. And that's what we're trying to solve. And if you think about all the big brokers in the world, not only do you have a chief insurance person or a CFO or somebody that's really thinking about it, a big company, you're also faced off with a whole team of people at the big broker, right? Who, can come in and like give real advice. Well, if you think about, if it's $3,000 risk, we're making $400 or $500 a year, right? You can't spend 4 days doing that, right? You have to do it in an automated way, but you want to make sure it's right. You want to make sure the advice that we give is correct, and that's what we think we can do.
So let's talk about some of 2025. Where are you in this? And then what are some of the technology approaches you're taking, or the ways that you are actually making this more successful, getting better recommendations to these, Main Street type of businesses? How is that working today? And, where is the business going, or where is the market going, even in that space with those people?
If you think of small business, it's like a wide variety, right? So simple GL, et cetera. Like we're moving to try to automate that in a more efficient way with carriers that will give us not only appetite APIs so we know what they want, but also bindable quote and pay APIs so that we can do it either in our system or online if somebody wants to do that. And then as you move up the spectrum to more complex stuff, even on the other end. So it's still small business, but with the way of the world, like the whole excess and surplus market is just getting more complex. Like, how can we do that in a way that allows it to be a profitable business for us, but the right coverage for them, and everything in between those two ends of the spectrum. And the good news is the base platform is the same. Right? We start out with an algorithm. We've mined a bunch of smart insurance, small business insurance people's brains, right? And that's the algorithm that we start at. We understand what carrier appetite is to start. And then the machine just keeps getting better and better and doing more and more and more. We've got 60,000 clients in 48 states. We do literally hundreds of thousands of quotes a year. And so we're always feeding it and getting better. And that's on the front end. On the back end, we can also hold our agents accountable for giving the recommendations to the clients that we tell them to, or at least know when they don't.
And so you're learning from that data too. You're using your agents as, well, why didn't you make the offer that we thought was right? And they might be like, well, because I talked to them and they had this other thing and this was the thing that they could get better
Well,
into, and
that's
we
all
didn't
on
pick
a
up on that.
recorded line, so we don't have to like take their word for it, or we can spot check and make sure, because at the end of the day, the machine, the recommendation engine, what we call the mind of Mylo, is smarter than any single person, right? Which also allows us to not have to invest 5 years in somebody until they know what they're doing. Like, we can literally bring the lead in through a partner on the glass. It shows up in their ear. The information is on their screen. They gather additional information. We make a coverage recommendation, a carrier recommendation, and we use integration, right? So that we're not, like, it doesn't sound cool, but it's really effective. Like,
Oh yeah.
not putting the same
So
information
anyone
in
out there
twice.
that's listening to this, on the back end of this technology is to understand how to put all this stuff together and then present it. It's a very big technical feat. Like,
Sure.
just thinking about through all the different ways you have to go. Let's talk about some of the hindrances of this then. So your Mylo's relationship with brokerage or brokers, just by the way that you just described it, is a little bit different. Do you guys view an agent's book of business as theirs? Is it Mylo's book of business? How do you go? Because a lot of brokerages are suffering right now from the idea that, well, our brokers are about to retire, but we have no connection to their customers. Their book of business is now up. What do we do about it? We don't even know really anything about this customer.
Sure,
So the
sure.
likelihood they're going to stay with us is problematic. So you're solving a lot of these problems by the way that you're bringing technology in. But let's talk about what your view of the agent or broker is in this relationship and then within the industry.
Yeah, I mean, so just to be fair, right outside the door, right, I have 60 agents on the phone that are Mylo agents, brokers, that we drive business to. Those are Mylo clients. The way that we built the system, like, we have the ability to do this in a multi-tenant way. So, and I do believe that, like, as we, we're internally focused and we're doing reps and doing reps and doing reps and doing reps, that ultimately this is a solution for higher volume, lower premium risk throughout the ecosystem, whether that's ours or somebody else's, and we built it that way. But right now we're focused on ours, and the proof statement that we can drive more volume to a single agent, have better outcomes to a single agent, service more clients through a single service agent, because that is really the only way to make this segment profitable. And if you're a big broker, right, or you're one of these roll-ups, and like, now you got to put it together. You've got that population, right? And you can't afford to call them. You can't afford to take them to golf. You can't afford to buy them lunch. But what you can afford to do is use the automated marketing and renewals and my accounts and all the things that make up our platform, right? You can serve them in a way that, frankly, is pretty efficient with the way they want to be served and consistent with the size of business they are. And so,
Yeah.
like I said, right now we're focused on ourselves, but we do believe, and we've done some dabbling with other sort of smaller but larger than us brokers to solve that problem for small business and Main Street individuals. And I think that's an upside to the business that we're in.
I think, one of the dirty secrets about the insured or the person running compliance or risk mitigation or any of these things in these organizations. And you said it earlier, a baker doesn't start a bakery to want to know about insurance, right? But the reality is there's some people who we call captain compliance in my world when I'm thinking about people. And these are people who are bred and true risk managers. They live and breathe insurance. They understand the stuff. They usually work for bigger organizations, sometimes not, but they have a fascination with the mechanics of it. And then you have another type, which is just, we need to get it done so we can get back to what we're doing.
That's right.
And that's in all of my research, and I've done a lot in studies, that's the majority of people out there dealing with these problems are just the get it done type of personality. They're not in this for understanding risk holistically. They're not in this for understanding insurance. In fact, if they could just not think about this till the next renewal, that's good, except for when something happens, right? And I think that is the fear that other brokerages use to try to sell these people that you need to have the more expensive line of service, or you need to have XYZ. And maybe historically that's been true because technology wasn't there. And so you needed to know someone who could go navigate the bowels of some insurance carrier for you, right? Do you find that this is not even a question that's coming from the majority of your buyers when they're interacting in this kind of a, more, I'm not going to call it transactional
They
because it's
have
not
no
that, but
idea what
let's
they
call it
want.
more intelligent.
They have no idea what
work.
they want. That's why they're coming to us, right? And I think 90 plus 95%, right, of people, here's who I am, what do I need, right? And so if they come to us and we say, what coverage do you want? And then we failed out of the gate. Like, we should be asking questions about their business, employees, property they have, all of those things that we either know that we get from a partner or that we ask the person when they're on the line, right? And we should then come and say, here's what you need, right? Here's the right amount of coverage. And then on the flip side, we also represent carriers. So they tell us what their appetite is, and then we bring it in, right? And well, as well as I do, right? This industry has done a huge disservice in that, like, this isn't like buying tennis shoes. Like,
Mhm.
one pair of one type of or one insurance policy is not the same as the other. So price is important, but shouldn't be the driver. You should understand what you need, and you want to make sure you're getting the right coverage at a fair value in comparison with the world. That's what we do, and that's what we can do at scale. And so from an insurance carrier perspective, whether that is, like a new carrier that startup, a traditional carrier, or an MGA that's acting like a carrier, or even excess and surplus, what they can be
Yeah.
assured is that when we put something in front of them, they know that it fits the criteria for what they want. So we sort of have both ends, then use technology just to make it easy,
Yeah, the
right?
translation between the two is really where your magic lies. I don't want people to get off on this and hear this as, you're an aggregator or you're
At all.
doing something else. So let's talk about something that's not quoting. Let's talk about the other part of this equation where this marketplace that you service is so difficult to get right, which is in billing, claims management, in financials. This is also where large brokerages spend a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of money, which make it really hard for small businesses to get the right insurance they need because they have this whole admin function that gets put onto their account, an account manager, all this stuff. So let's talk about how you're using technology in your process there for solving
Yeah,
that pain.
sure. So on the service side, if it's between multiple carriers, we service it ourselves, right? If it is excess and surplus, of course, most of the times we service it ourselves. If it is like single carrier, even if it's, multiple types of policies with that single carrier, with the carrier service center service it. And then we sit on top of it, right, to be an escalation point, like a traditional broker, right?
Yeah.
But we, again, have to operate at scale. We don't want to, nobody's going to wake up on Wednesday going, I wonder what's going on with my insurance, right? It's one of two things. Something happens,
Yeah.
right? Or a renewal happens. And then we use technology to make the renewal super easy. And with the changes going on in, the hard market in the world and the, fires and the other stuff that's going
Yeah.
on, then we can be proactive in like requoting without having to have somebody go out and fill out a whole bunch of information. Again, we start with what we have. And we use technology to make that an efficient transaction. And carrier appetite changes, things that change from a potential insured or an insured's perspective. Like, we can bring that all together and make it as seamless as possible. And that's really
Yeah.
how we think about it. Now, do we do risk or do we do claims? No, carriers do claims. Do we sit on top of it? Yeah. We want to be an escalation point. Again, it's a very different experience versus somebody that's paying $1 million a year or $500,000 a year from a premium standpoint to, our average client's $3,000 a year, $2,500 a year. Right. And so we want to right size that and let that small business owner get a great level of service, but one that's commensurate with the space that they live in. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I like the model for all sorts of reasons. I have been critical in the past of the broker model and how it works and how it scales across the built world and who essentially makes money off of that. Right. And what kind of conversations there are. And I'm very interested in all these democratizations of the right service, the right job that you need to be done, and none of the extra stuff that's not necessary for
right.
what you need to accomplish.
That's right. And that's exactly what we do. And that's where technology brings it home. Right. And, I don't think brokers are going away. I think our platform just enhances what they do, makes them better. Like, think about commercial insurance and the wide range of things you have to be an expert on. Right.
Yep.
You can't. but the system can.
Right.
Right? The system can make you smarter, make you ask fewer questions, make you give better recommendations, understand the appetite from a broader number of carriers. That's what it is. And we just happen to use it to focus on our small, our agency, right? And, we do $4+ million a month in new premium, right?
Yeah.
And that's, you can do the math at $2,500 a pop. I mean,
Yeah. The volume is fairly high, right?
yep.
Well, you mentioned hundreds of thousands of policies you quote, and then you mentioned some customer numbers. Why doesn't someone complete and move to Mylo? Like, what are some of the things that still need to be solved for the small business?
And I think for small business owners, right, it depends on how they come. I think there are a lot of shoppers. I think there are a lot of people that want to know what they might, but they've talked to somebody, they might feel like they get talked into it. I think carrier app, like the more complex it gets with excess and surplus and all of that sort of stuff, I think that is something that we can make it easier. Frankly, carriers allowing us to do like bindable quotes and pay without
Yeah.
having to like jump out into their system.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of stuff. We have partners because we distribute through channel partners. So I think small business lenders, companies that start companies, those sort of ecosystems that exist were really insurance an extension of what they do. And we,
Yeah, right.
embedded's like a buzzword, or has been the last few years. That's how we started our whole business, right? Because I can't compete with Flo and Peyton Manning and all those people
Yeah.
on TV from an SEO standpoint. So we put our stuff in there. They send us information. And then when somebody comes over to us, like, we want to be their insurance extension of what they do. And they've got a customer experience that, like, we're just in addition to. Like, the most important thing is don't screw my thing up.
Yeah, right.
And that's really how we think about it and what we do and how we built the thing. So that when somebody comes over to me, we can give them a consistent recommendation, right, without it being like a 4-day process. I mean, I showed this to somebody the other day, and like literally we got a bindable quote in like 8 minutes for, it wasn't like a super complex risk, but it was a small business owner who had employees, who owned a building, et cetera. And they're like, oh my God, that was 8 minutes, right? And I mean, that's like 3 days in my world. I think that is what we're trying to do. So
I'm trying not to ask a controversial question that later maybe gets you in trouble, but everything that you've learned about this high volume model, can it not be replicated by a carrier themselves? Can it not be replicated by, like, is this the world where you believe all insurance, even the largest organizations, Aons of the world or whatever, are going to be moving to more of this system because it's better for the customer? Or do you believe there is a line that where a customer really does need all these additional services?
I think that two things. One, I think on the simple end, if it's just a GL or just like an auto, right? Like, that stuff can be bound. And today, and some of it can be today, but not very many carriers. Certainly you can't bundle much, but if it's the simpler it is, the easier it is to automate, right? Two, from a informed recommendation, I think that there's a lot of runway, right, in terms of what we can do. Three, but once you get above a certain size and there are loss runs and all of these things and unique situations, I think the more likely you are to actually need somebody to do, something that is specific to you, right? Where that is might move up, right? But there's also two overlying factors. One is, like the way that somebody wants to buy, right? And so, like I said, like, you could be a simple GL, but you're like clicking over and you're like, I don't know. And instead of doing that, you say, call me, or you call the thing. And fortunately, the whole thing sits on the same chassis. So when they talk to us, we don't have to ask all the same information. We just validate some things. And some people like hearing it from a human versus not. And two, I think that the thing that will drive this is this demographics. Like people that are younger than me, even younger than you, Jason. They grew up in a way that they, don't want to interact with somebody unless they have to. And so I think the whole thing's going to go that way. And I think it's a spectrum, right? Simple, yes, more and more. The more complex it gets, the more esoteric or unique it is, like the more likely you have to have somebody. But that doesn't mean that people don't want somebody in the middle, right? And so
Right.
we need to serve them. We need to serve up these recommendations in the way that they want to consume them. And that's what the platform allows us to do. Like how you actually buy the insurance, who you actually talk to, doesn't matter, right? It's the recommendation that we're building. And it will
Yeah.
be good to a certain place. Like the more homogenous it is, the less weird it is.
Yeah.
The less complex your situation is, the more it will be able to make better recommendations.
It's more like what we've seen. Obviously, the likelihood that you probably made 1,000 times is we've seen the tax market change this way, right? There, you can do up to a thing and it keeps getting better and better, but we keep creating more complex situations for it to exist in. So there's still room for the other thing. It's just that layer on top of it too.
CPAs aren't going away despite the ubiquitous nature of all of these tax preparing softwares. I've got a son that's 23, right? And he was talking to me, Dad, do you think I'm going to tax? I'm like, well, it's real super simple, right? You've got your first job out of college, you have your income, right? You have what they withheld. That's pretty much all you have. Like go plug it in to the software you used last year. I'll tell you in like 2 minutes. Somebody that has more complexity, you just can't do that right now.
Right. Last question I have, because I like to ask it, and I feel like you've been at this for a while and at a really interesting intersection. If someone's coming into the world of insurance, Insurtech, just thinking about working for a brokerage, what's a piece of advice that you would give them that you maybe have gained over your tenure, or maybe that you would say to prepare them for the market that they're entering into right now?
Yeah, I mean, for insurance specifically, it's not hard. It's just complex, right? And it's unique in terms of the subject matter expertise. And I probably underestimated the uniqueness of that. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, everything takes longer and costs way more than you think it ever will. So, and
Patience.
You laugh. I don't know if it's patience. It's perseverance, probably more.
Oh, I love that. Yes, absolutely. I love the idea of saying it's complex, but it's not hard. It is following the thread, right? I find it infinitely fascinating because it's such a diverse system and is created on a lot of, and at the end of the day, a lot of handshakes behind the doors.
Yeah.
I could talk to you about API access. You mentioned some really interesting things about carriers and where they're going, but I think I'll wrap it up now and maybe bring you back for a future episode with a roundtable where we can discuss some of how can we get carriers to become more technologists, because that seems to be a problem that some companies like ours
There are two ends of the spectrum, the new ones and the old ones, and they both are trying to meet in the middle. So I'd love to do that. So
awesome. Thank you, my friend. David, thank you for joining me on Brick by Brick. It's been awesome talking to you, man.
You too. Take care, Jason. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Risk Management Brick by Brick is brought to you by TrustLayer. Find out how TrustLayer manages risk so that the people can build the physical world around us. Head over to TrustLayer.io. And then make sure to subscribe to Risk Management Brick by Brick on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the TrustLayer team, thank you for listening.